Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We have a great presentation here today from Dart Mining, talking about the Triumph Gold project acquisition, which will be a material acquisition for the company. And to walk us through that and other aspects and the outlook for Dart Mining, we have the Executive Chairman of Dart Mining, Mr. James Chirnside, and the Head of Exploration, Mr. Owen Greenberger. There'll be some time at the end of this presentation for some Q&A, and between now and then, I'll hand it over to James to walk us through.
Thanks very much, Pete, and welcome everyone, and thanks very much for attending. We thought it would be timely based on what we've just announced to the market about the Triumph Gold project acquisition, as well as a significant capital raising initiative to walk people through it. Pete, if you could flick forward, we may have a number of new shareholders on board, so I'll just corporate profile me as Executive Chairman. Dean Turnbull is actually a founder of Dart Mining before it went public in 2007 and sat on the board for 7 years after that, and then a couple of years off it and then back onto the board. Richard Udavenya has been or is a non-exec director. Richard runs a resources law practice in Melbourne, and Dean is a geologist. So senior management, Owen, who's with us here today, Terry Bates, who's head of business development, and that really involves talking to people and looking for other opportunities that might suit us. Andrew Dawes has joined us very recently. He is the author of the mineral resource estimate on the Triumph project, and he'll be largely taking care of our activities up there. Julie Edwards, as many will know, is our company secretary. The table at the bottom is a little bit out of whack, although the shares on issue right now is correct. Options and performance rights are correct, but the share price, well, I suppose it is, it's vaguely correct. But flick forward, Pete. I will talk just to the highlights of the acquisition. So in broad terms, $1 million of cash subject to payment. We've paid a $50,000 deposit so far. 950 balance falls due at completion of the legalities. I'd expect that sort of mid to late October, probably. The current holder or the vendor of the project is Sunshine Metals. Great exploration company. We've been working with them for about 5 months now to pull this deal together. Sunshine will, or post issuance of tranche 1, tranche 2, and the rights will be a significant shareholder in Dart, and they were quite insistent on maintaining exposure to this project. They're very focused on a giant VMS system that they purchased last year out of liquidation for a song. It's a very good project, and they're typically good exploration companies, very focused, and that's what they're doing. The acquisition cost in terms of ounces in the ground, the headline number is $16.95. There is scope for pretty quick expansion in the resource, and Owen will speak to that in a moment. You'll see a map in a moment too, giving an orientation on just where it is. It's within a historic mining region in central Queensland, skilled workforce and available infrastructure, including ports and mills. So what are we looking for here? We're looking for a multi-million ounce target, and we think we know how we're going to get there. There's been a tremendous amount of work done on the Triumph Gold project by the former owners, Sunshine Metals, and before them, Metalbank. A total of around 8 million, 8.5 million spent on the project to date. We would expect that in combination with our Victorian drilling activities at Rushworth at the moment, we would expect to be generating a great deal of news flow, both from Queensland and the ongoing drilling programs we've got happening at Rushworth. I'll hand to you, Owen, just give a real quick summary on the resource itself, or on the project.
Sure, thanks, James. Highlight number there is the existing inferred resource of 118,000 ounces at just over 2 grams. That's been the main focus of Sunshine leading in for the last couple of years as that resource definition work. 85% of the resource sits within 100 metres of the surface, and less than 20% of the potential mineralised strike is being drill tested. And it's come up with 5 established zones of resources, all of which are open along strike and at depth. As James mentioned, there's an existing set of high quality geological and geophysical data sets to aid us in our exploration. And we've already identified, as part of the due diligence process, a number of undrilled target areas and zones ready for us to go and drill test.
Pete, do you want to flick it? Okay, I'll just talk to the placement, the capital raise. Just go back on there. Thanks, Pete. So we've just concluded a 2-tranche placement, tranche 1 and tranche 2. They were to professional and sophisticated investors. So tranche 1 raised $775,000. That'll settle next week. Tranche 2 is for a total firm committed $1.08 million. That will settle in early to mid-October. We had some pretty strong support from a couple of large Dart Mining shareholders, and the other terms of the placement, the pricing was at 1.2 cents. There's a 1-for-2 12-month duration option, which is struck at 2 cents itself. So actually, based on the market price, I think yesterday, it's at the money. That will be followed very shortly by an entitlements issue, a 1-for-3 non-renounceable entitlements issue to eligible shareholders. We're just finalising the timetable on that, but that will launch pretty quick soon, like perhaps next week. That will raise a further $1.3 million, assuming the placement of the shortfall. We've had a lot of interest already in the shortfall. The entitlements issue is allowing existing shareholders the opportunity to participate, and there will be a top-up facility in the entitlements issue. The use of funds, as you'd expect, for accelerating the exploration around the Triumph Gold project, also to pay for the acquisition, which is $1 million of cash, and generally for exploration activities in Victoria and Queensland, and general working capital. There we go. I'll leave you, Owen, to speak to this.
So the location of the Triumph project is about 50 kilometres southeast of Gladstone on the coast in north-central Queensland, surrounded by some fairly big intrusive related gold systems there on the map, with Mount Morgan, Krakow down to the southwest, and Mount Rawdon with over 2.8 million ounces of production and history sitting in the region. So it's a well-positioned project amongst some fairly big operations. The image on the right is the exploration licenses. You can see the light grey is the host rock, is the Norton tonalite, with the southern and northern mineral resources shown around the offset of the Norton Fault. The green on the left is a national park, but it does abut a couple of the projects. But Queensland is pretty liberal with their national park classification, and we've got indications that you can do land swaps and bits and pieces to move those boundaries and allow us access if the economics work for extraction and further exploration, so it won't cause any major issues for the project. Next one, Pete. So summary of the deposit style. It's down on the bottom left of that image, sitting in high sulfide quartz veins, surrounded by carbonate sericite alteration around the lodes, really similar to Ravenswood. Sunshine themselves compare it to Ravenswood in a lot of their press releases early, and we agree with that interpretation of that big intrusive related magnetic system with the high grade gold quartz sulfide veins. The region is host to a lot of these deposits. Ravenswood there with 7 million ounces. We'll do a little comparison later in the piece. Mount Rawdon, Krakow, and Mount Morgan, as we've discussed. And Sunshine's recent drilling showed mineralisation of a really large area across the deposit, with upwards of 2 kilometres from the lodes, both west and north. Really demonstrates that the Triumph is a big system sitting there waiting to be further drilled. Next. Summary of the existing mineral resource. 118,000 ounces at 2.3 grams across 2 lines. There's the southern line, which hosts most of the project, with 100,000 ounces across the Big Hands, New Constitution and Super Hands pits. They occur where you get an east-west orientated structure intersecting with a northwest-southeast orientated structure. Where they intersect, you get the mineralisation blowing out to economic levels. Both structures in both orientations are mineralised. You can see a small ML in the top right image. That's held by a third party and not part of the deal. But you can see the mining infrastructure sits there, extends off into the surrounding exploration licenses. That's really largely untested. So all of the resource areas remain open along strike and along depth, and even secondary follow-up structures. So the image on the bottom right is the northern corridor. The mineralisation of the 18,000 ounces exists in the dark black outlines on the lower section. Not far to the north, there's a second orientation structure with some fantastic RC hits in there, with 3 metres at 25 grams and 1 metre at 9, 5 metres at 2.3 just off to the north. So that's not part of the mineral resource, and it's just littered with really good intersections of high grade. Also, the offset of the resource area, there's 2 metres at 14 grams just off as an extension off to the east of the mineral resource. So lots of work to follow up and extend that resource area relatively quickly and easily. It's a summary of the exploration potential. Tonalite really shows up in magnetics. It has a high magnetic response. The mineralisation comes through with a potassic alteration, which destroys some of that magnetic response. So you can see the southern line there is highlighted by a yellow colour rather than that hot pink, and that's the destruction of the magnetite within the tonalite system. In the centre of the project, there's a really blue bullseye just off to the near the advanced logo there. That's a classic response of Mount Rawdon, Ravenswood and Mount Lation, which are all tonalite hosted similar systems. And it's got something to do with the intrusion of a later large intrusive, which introduces the mineralizing fluid into the surrounding fractured host rocks. There's some rock chip highlights on there, 62 and 18 grams from just off the Norton Fault, close to 10 grams from that low magnetic response area in the middle, and 255 grams just north of Bald Hill logo there. And none of those have been followed up or even gone back to check what type of rock they were. Sunshine have just been absolutely focused on the resource extension. So lots of opportunities for us to go and do some follow-up geology and exploration work. Here's a summary of the intersecting structures of Ravenswood. That's a fairly early pit design from the project. Ravenswood's been held in private hands since about 2019, so there's not a lot of public information about it. But you can see the intersecting north-south structures with the east-west structures. Where they intersect, you get the blowouts of grade. The bottom left is that same southern corridor intersection highlighting the intersecting structures. Ravenswood's turned into a multi-million ounces of production, with 200,000 ounces of production scheduled well into 2035. There's a lot of similarities between that and what we see at Triumph. Multiple veins, cross-cutting structures, close to surface, gets better with depth, and it's an exciting little project to go and get our hands on. I think the next slide has a depth showing the depth of drilling that's occurred at Triumph. Only a handful of holes have gone below 150 metres below surface, all of which intersect grade and high sulfide veins, with next to no drilling following them up. On the image on the left is another cross-section from Ravenswood showing 2019 resources in the open pits. The scales are the same, the depths are the same. You can see there's a lot of growth at depth at Ravenswood with some increasing grades that just have no testing done at Triumph. So what are we going to do? First thing we'll do off the bat is a resource estimation update. There's an existing 3,695 metres of RC drilling completed by Sunshine that needs to be incorporated into the resource statement. There's also no silver in the resource estimation. Silver within the system runs at nearly 2:1 gold to silver ratio, so potential to host a fairly significant silver resource within the project that's unaccounted for as it stands. And then we'll do some infill and step out drill testing to increase resource confidence and grow that resource. As well as doing some existing exploration target follow-up drilling and moving into a greensfield targeting late into the project cycle of our planning into April next year. As James mentioned, the money raised will provide working capital for our ongoing exploration efforts across Victoria and Queensland. We've got the rig busy drilling at Rushworth in central Victoria. That'll move up to Queensland after project completion in early November, and it'll give us a chance to put our heads around what we've discovered at Rushworth and do some planning to continue exploration in Victoria later in the first half of next year. And we're also completing investment and divestment opportunities across Victoria and the eastern states of Australia to continue to look at improving our prospectivity of the projects and tenement holdings across the group.
Okay. Well, Pete, that's kind of it from us. We wanted to make it pretty short and sweet. Very happy to take questions. And if anyone has any, please fire away. You're on mute, Pete.
Thank you. I'll kick off with the Triumph Gold Project. It's up in Queensland. Tell us how that came about and what was your initial interest?
Look, Terry Bates is our Darts business development guy. He and Damien Keys, who's the MD at Sunshine, met about 5 or 6 months ago now, started talking. They were fairly keen to move the project on so they could put all their resources into their big VMS system just outside of Townsville, which is where their exploration office is. This project actually Triumph sits about 800 kilometres away from their office. It's not all about convenience, though, of course, but they bought that VMS out of liquidation last year, bought it for a song. Great acquisition. They're a very good exploration company. They're very focused, and I think that's a key point, and that's what we are doing here at Dart, getting really focused in on 1 or 2 projects. So logistically, very doable, not a problem. We have transport equipment. We can move our camp up to Queensland, or one of our camps. We've got 2 camps. Move that up there, establish a bit of a regional base. I think probably worth noting that there are some interesting potential either collaborations or possible acquisitions of further ground up in central Queensland, which are very much in line with our own minimum standards around only taking on projects with resource on them, haven't seen a lot of love with mid-ounce type potential. So probably worthy of note, there was a fellow, Dr. Greg Morrison, has done a lot of work with Triumph and with Metalbank. He's a globally renowned intrusive related gold system expert, and he had a number of recommendations for both Metalbank and Triumph, which they chose not to focus on, really because they wanted to get the resource up, the maiden resource. But Morrison's view is that, in summary, the real prize on this Triumph project is actually at depth, probably 200 metres and greater. As Owen pointed out, it's only been a couple of holes that have gone deeper than 150. and both those holes were carrying grade at depth. So that's an obvious sort of blue sky exploration potential for us, and we can combine some real exploratory holes with the resource expansion and upgrade. Owen didn't mention that the inferred nature of the estimate at the moment, the mineral resource estimate, is such that there's about 90% of RC drilling. So we need to do quite a bit of diamond to get some structural feedback, and that'll give the resource geologist, who happens to be Andrew Dawes, working for us, that'll give him the confidence around upgrading the resource as well.
James, cost of contracting, obviously, in this inflationary environment is a key topic. Can you give your shareholders a bit of an overview of the benefits of having some of your own workforce and equipment in terms of the drilling costs?
Yes. So part of the cap raise is going towards, not a huge amount, but part of it will go towards acquiring a second drill rig, which happens to be sitting in Gympie. We've got an option on that. Didn't cost us anything. We know the guy really well. It's got much better depth capacity than the current drill rig that we've got. Theoretically, we'd probably sell the rig that we've got at some stage and possibly replace it with another similar type to the one that we're acquiring. Much better depth capability, like 500 meters HQ drilling, even down to 1,000 meters of BQ, small footprint on track. So, but to the cost side of it, Pete, our costs at the moment on drilling, that is direct drilling costs, that's before logging, sampling and assays, is running at about $95 a metre, which is roughly speaking about a third, if not even less than the current contractor rates. The other thing that I really like about having our own in-house drilling capability is that you can be a bit more exploratory with a much lower cost base. So it unconstrains some of the thinking, particularly on the geology team, about just where to put holes. You can be a little bit more adventurous, I suppose, rather than waiting for a 2-week drilling program to come in, a campaign to come in, do the job. You know, it's all planned in advance. There's no movement generally from what you had previously planned. So yeah, it's great having our own gear. The camps save us a lot of money on accommodation and stuff. You're looking at $200 a night per head, whereas really all we're paying for with the camps, and they've already paid themselves back 2 or 3 times over. You're talking about a cost of food, $40 in wages for guys in the field. So, and you're really close to the work sites, which improves your time at work, so to speak.
There's some great benefits in being flexible and having autonomy over those assets. On the theme of drilling, and you might have mentioned this before, but what realistically is your time frame on commencing some drilling at Triumph?
Well, look, we've got between 7,000 and 10,000 meters planned. The bulk of that will be in the resource expansion, but we're really keen to get in and put some deep holes in and just try and sort of get more feedback, more understanding of what's happening at depth, because we really do believe that that's where the prize is. It's fantastic having a resource so shallow, and obviously only a long strike of around 20% or thereabouts. We've got numerous untested, undrill tested zones to go to. We've identified all those. So through our due diligence, and by having Andrew Dawes, who wrote the mineral resource estimate, we've been able to short track, if you like, or a lot of the work that otherwise you'd have to be doing coming into it fresh or green without that sort of historic knowledge. So in terms of drilling, we'd hope to be drilling in November. The deal won't actually complete until October, mid-October, late October, subject to ministerial approvals from the Queensland government, that sort of thing. But there's an opportunity for us to get on the ground. I think there's a couple of guys going up at the end of, in the next couple of weeks, literally, to recce out some laydown areas and that sort of thing. And survey some historic drill collars, and there's a couple other surface sampling, things like that. So we will hit the ground there literally in 2 weeks' time, with the permission of Sunshine, and that's all been put in place. So.
And perhaps a question for Owen here on metallurgy, and given we are not metallurgists, but is there information known about the existing geological mineralization, and perhaps does this metallurgy, is it likely to be similar to known separation in the region or at this site?
Yeah, absolutely. It's sulfide-rich mineralization. Metal Bank and Sunshine have done met testing that recovers at 92 to 93% through a simple CIP-CAL circuit, and you can gravity concentrate up to 97% of the sulfides into a concentrate for testing or shipping out elsewhere. The mining license guys have a toll treatment agreement with Krakow existing, and we've been in discussions with those guys, and they're keen to explore those opportunities further if you get into a mining scenario. So it is recoverable. There are mills within the region that can process it, and they're open to taking toll treatment options from us.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, I just want to emphasize that our real interest in this project is the multi-million ounce potential that it could possibly deliver. But with the ML smack in the middle of our EL areas, or EPMs as they call them in Queensland, there is potentially, it's owned by some local businessmen. They haven't had a great deal of success with it, simply because we think they've probably gone about it the wrong way. But there is potential for some shortened pathway to production. It's not our main focus, and there's a heck of a lot of work that would need to be done on that to understand the economics better. As it is, it's probably almost too small a scale for anyone to take on very comfortably. But we know the ore body's extending into our EL areas, and with that we could potentially collaborate. But I don't want to put a lot of resources into that, certainly not early on. What we need to do is get the exploration potential of this reflecting in our market cap, and then we can have those discussions down the track.
And thank you, Owen, for putting a very well delivered answer to my garbled question on the metallurgy, but that was there's some good data in that, so thank you. You've answered most of the questions here we've covered. One has come through just suggesting that some of the Victorian tenements abutting Ngambie might have some antimony. Can you talk to that region?
Yeah, look, let me I'll just handle that one. We are looking at it. Obviously, antimony is a very hot thing at the moment with China's halting of exports, I think from the 24th of September. It's a very critical and strategic element used in military applications and all the rest of it. DART has had some evidence of antimony. We're looking more closely at that, and obviously in the interest of keeping the market informed, if there's anything to report that's of any substance, we will be doing that sooner rather than later. But yes, we are looking at that. And there is actually, interestingly, there is some evidence of antimony in the Triumph project as well, from historic mining days, from reports back in 1880 on the old Advance gold mine there. I think that they had some hits of antimony. So yes, to the Rushworth project, we've got the Roo gold field extension into our southern part of our ELs, and obviously Southern Cross had some really good hits down there. And we're looking more comprehensively at that, and we'll report to the market and shareholders as soon as we reach a conclusion on that.
All right, that wraps things up. James, perhaps just the last summary and message on the outlook for the shareholders on this call and those who will get this call in the recorded version in the email later on. Where do you think, what can they look forward to? I see the share price is holding up reasonably well, very well actually, given the announcement on the raise.
Yeah, look, the raise is, very dilutive. There's no question about that. I guess the thing that we faced was, what do we do here? Like, do we go out, raise money at these, low market cap levels, etc., into what we think is an absolutely fantastic project? And, the simple question is, will the project and will our reorganisation with, potentially some good stuff out of Rushworth as well, is that going to offset the dilution? We absolutely firmly believe that it will. I'd go further to say that we might look forward to a much better resources market broadly, both in base metals and precious metals, but even battery metals with lithium or whatever. I haven't mentioned the lithium, but our Dorchap lithium project has got 3,000 metre planned. In fact, it's more than that, isn't it, Owen? I think it's 5,000 metre planned program. We've got that planned, and the applications for it are all sitting with government at the moment. We can move quickly on that, but right now, with the sentiment and price of lithium, we're quite happy to be focused very much on the gold. But the lithium project is actually ready to be drilled into what are our most prospective pegmatite dikes that carried by far the best grades and tons. So into the Gosport group of dikes, where we had 2.35 up to 2.35, I think, rock chips at surface. That's lithium oxide. And yeah, there appears to be a lot of tons, at least at surface, but who knows what's below. So the lithium's kind of on hold, but ready to go at fairly short notice. And we could use our own rigs for drilling that out. But at the moment, it's really all about Triumph, which will become Dart's real flagship project, but not forgetting Rushworth. It is a fantastic project. It's just not as advanced as Triumph in terms of exploration.
Well, nice to be heading into some exploration of a new exciting project with the gold price at 2,500 US and a great environment for gold explorers and developers. Thanks for joining us this morning, team from Dart. Thanks for joining us, our audience, investors and shareholders, and we look forward to hearing from you all again soon. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone, for attending.